A little before dawn in the English Channel, British Chinooks hover metres above a Russian Shadow Fleet oil tanker. One by one, Royal Marines lower themselves on board. Russia has been operating a shadow fleet of tankers to evade international sanctions imposed on its oil exports following their invasion of Ukraine. Responsible for carrying 75% of Russia's sanctioned oil, the shadow fleet of more than 700 vessels provide a critical financial lifeline for the Kremlin. Some are also used for sabotage and hybrid operations against Europe.
Well, it's professionally rewarding to be part of the UK's first interdiction of a Russian Shadow Fleet vessel. It's very much a team effort. It's commanded at the operational level by the Royal Navy. It involves National Crime Agency and other parts of government. Evading sanctions to fund an illegal war in Ukraine will be countered with decisive action, and that's what we've done on this occasion.
The Prime Minister green-lighted this kind of interception back in March, but it fell on the week where perhaps he most needed a military PR boost, after dramatically losing his Defence Secretary and Armed Forces Minister this week in a fallout over their budget. The images of the successful operation will also help the Prime Minister ahead of the G7 this week, where pressure for increased military spending will undoubtedly be a hot topic.
Well, this is something that the Prime Minister has wanted to do for a long time. Russia is in part financing its war in Ukraine by operating vessels through British waters and others.
The Culture Secretary also confirmed that the defence investment plan that led to the resignations last week still isn't set in stone.
Those discussions are definitely still ongoing. Just to be clear, in the last few days, I've spoken to both the Prime Minister and the Chancellor about choices that we're making in my own department, and I know other cabinet ministers are doing the same.
President Zelensky thanked the Prime Minister for detaining the oil tanker on the south coast of England in today's operation. He too has made a small dent on Russia's most lucrative export today after Ukrainian drones bombed an industrial fuel storage facility in the Yaroslav region north of Moscow, leading to billowing black smoke and a fire confirmed by the regional governor. The international sanctions and Ukrainian attacks on Russian oil facilities seem to be having the desired effect. This week, the Kremlin was forced to acknowledge the worst fuel crisis in Crimea since it was illegally annexed in 2014. The government says they hope today's interdiction will be the first of many. What they're not saying, but perhaps thinking, is that it will prove to doubters both at home and abroad that British forces can still pull off operations like this.
Anya Pop reporting. Well, joining me now is the Labour MP Al Khans, who resigned, as Anya said, as Armed Forces Minister earlier this week. Al Khans, thanks for joining us. What did you make of the Shadow Fleet operation then? You must have been beaming with pride.
Yeah, I was absolutely delighted. You know, really professional operation, surgically executed by the Royal Marines in the middle of the night. You know, while we were all sleeping, they were jumping on helicopters, you know, going into the unknown. They did a fantastic job. And, you know, all of that oil that is no longer, or the money from that oil that is no longer going to Russia has saved hundreds, if not thousands of lives in Ukraine, which is a fantastic and honourable thing to be doing.
You would have heard earlier in the day, Lisa and Andy said that the government is still looking at numbers for the defence plan. That's what you resigned over. Did you jump too soon?
Not at all. I mean, if we've resigned and now they're re-looking at the numbers, then that's fantastic. They've realised that there's a requirement to do two things, really. One, make sure the defence investment plan is preparing to fight the next war, not the last one, and make sure that the resource meets the bill. So I'm absolutely delighted that there's, wriggle room in there and they're moving towards a better solution.
Do you not have some regret, though, that you're not there making sure that they are listening to people with experience like yourselves to push this through? You have said in recent days that this world is so uncertain and scary, so surely you must be upset that you're not in the room anymore.
Yeah, I ran out of road with people listening to me in government, so I had to step outside to make my voice heard. My biggest regret is not being on those fast ropes onto that tanker with my old Royal Marine colleagues, of which I recognised the voice that was talking just before, and I've worked with him in the past. I think the reality is, if you step back and look at this interview, you've talked about Middle East, you've talked about Ukraine. You know, there's 15 billion worth of cyber attacks cost this country. There's a war in the influence space ongoing. the world is more geopolitically unstable than ever before, which talks to the requirement to fund the defence investment plan correctly, but importantly, get that defence investment plan fit to fight the next war, not all of this old kit that has sort of fallen out of date.
So are you confident that the government is moving in the right direction and will have the funding by 2030, or do you think it will fall short?
So the rest of Europe is heading towards a 2030 timeline. We need to dock into that and align with it. I think what the musings that we've heard today, whether it be from the Secretary of State for Defence, Lisa Nandy and others, is there is wriggle room here and the government will do the right thing and get the right funding measures. Because if we don't, we start dropping down the NATO league table. And that actually has big standing for us in the world, or big implications for us in the world, and it will be recognised by partners. We're a world leader here. We may think we're 3 foot tall, but a lot of allies think we're 6, 7, 8 foot tall. And we've got to keep that going because that's huge ramifications for economy and how we link ourselves into both Europe and the US.
The row, you'll know, has always been about funding. So I'm curious to know what you would cut. Is it welfare? Is it health? Is it education? Where would you get those cuts from?
So everybody tries to put this into a black and white discussion over welfare versus warfare. I think it's actually a much more holistic view across all of our other government departments. I do think there's a requirement to review welfare from handouts to hand-ups. But the reality is we also need to make sure that our tax-paying money goes to really good use. And defence, for a long time, has wasted huge amounts of money on long procurement programmes to deliver sophisticated kit that cannot be reproduced fast enough to maintain and sustain a conflict of scale. And that's why I always point to the Defence Investment Plan, learning lessons from Ukraine and making sure every pound of our tax-paying money is spent well.
On your social media, you posted the question very recently in the last few hours, is this country resilient enough to look after its own people? What's your answer to that?
Well, here's my honest synopsis of the problem. We think of battleships, bombs and bullets in isolation of national resilience. The best defence strategy is national resilience. That means how much can this country absorb when we get into a crisis? For a long time, we've packaged up our military and sent them overseas to fight. Iraq, Afghanistan. The reality is we now need to fight from home. That means the whole of society needs to be resilient towards any shock.
Is this your leadership pitch then?
Not at all. This is about making sure that should there be a crisis in the next 3 to 5 years,
Well,
we can absolutely respond to it.
Well, I tried to get an answer on that, but thank you very much, Al. Good to speak to you. Thank you.